Hello from the West Coast of the United States, beautiful Santa Monica, California. I'm Gerald Everett Jones. I am a book author and publishing consultant, and I'm very pleased to join the Passion, Purpose, and Peace Summit today and to share my thoughts on the three writers who influenced my life. And I'd like to share those experiences with you. We often talk about the entertainment industry, and I've always been uncomfortable with that term. And yet, in many cases, we're producing art, a cultural process that's so much more than just a simple distraction. In our world where, let's say, human beings invented the internet so that we could think globally when we absolutely have to, when we must for our very survival, I would submit that storytelling builds community. I've done most fiction writing in my career over the last 20 years or so. I spent quite a lot of time in my early career writing business and technical books, and that did give me discipline. But now, as a fiction writer, I often write from a blank page, and I feel as though that's a way to engage my subconscious mind, and I feel as though if I can surprise myself, perhaps I can delight and surprise you. Much of my work is literary fiction, and it's really difficult to describe a genre. And the three writers that I'm going to share with you, they verge on genre at times, but I will say that this is primarily literary fiction and that it is really more a matter of what themes they're tackling, what issues they're wrestling with, and how they bring their attitudes to the page. And in many ways, what they say between the lines. The first writer I'll share with you is John le Carré, which was the nom de plume of David Cornwell, a British author, passed away recently, had an extremely long career, very active, beginning in the middle of the 20th century. Perhaps one might say that his spy thrillers and geopolitical intrigues were mostly rooted in the Cold War and in the conflicts between the Soviet Union and the Western world. I think officially he admitted that he had been in the diplomatic corps. Whether he was actually a spy in the classic sense is unclear and perhaps deliberately obscure. The book that I have probably reread more than any that I've come across is Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which is the first of three novels in the George Smiley series. And one of the things that impresses me about this book is Le Carré is very much a stylist. There is the Hemingway school of writing, 20-word sentences and no more than two independent clauses in a sentence, no words longer than three syllables. And that's fine for journalism, but in fiction, it can be delightful, it can be enjoyable for the prose to be more poetic. It can spin you in circles, it can tease your mind. I picked up on that cadence. I began to not only understand it, but I began to delight in it. And the thing that is most remarkable about Le Carré is the term that he uses, the close observer. He describes spies as the close observer. And in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, one of the characters that you meet very early on is a young introverted boy in public school who feels alienated from his friends. He feels he's being bullied and he keeps to himself very much. And yet he is what Le Carré describes as a watcher. He pays attention to everything. And He is therefore a close observer. This is the basic talent that one has, that one gains as a spy. Now, George Smiley, the senior intelligence officer, who's the protagonist, the investigator in these books, is something of an unlikely hero. He's not a James Bond. He's a portly middle-aged man who is married unhappily and who lives a relatively mundane life. At least on a day-to-day basis, he's certainly been involved in intrigues from time to time. But one thing about George Smiley is that when he walks home at night to his flat in Chelsea, he can remember every license plate of every car that he passes on the street. Now, this isn't something that he does deliberately now. It's a skill that he's picked up simply because he has been trained to notice everything. And this is one of the engines, what I call an engine of mystery, engine of drama in Le Carré's books, is that he will present to you a wealth of detail. Much of it will seem meaningless. Now, I know you've seen this on other mystery stories, and the investigator will go into the office or the bedroom or the kitchen of whoever the missing person is, or the dead person, or the suspected person, and you'll get a description of every object on the desk. This is all going to indicate who that person is. And later in the story, it may turn out that one of these details is vitally important. And yet you're not going to know which one is significant until much later. So, like George, you're going to have to retain this, or it will be more rewarding for you to retain this. And the thing that you begin to realize as a reader, a close reader, a close observer of John le Carré's books, is that what else is a reader but a close observer? And I began to realize, and I'm not even sure that it was the first time I went through the book, I began to realize that Le Carré is not only training me how spies approach reality, how they digest experience, how they take in the world around them, but Le Carré is teaching me how to read. He's teaching me how to pay attention, not telling you what to think, yet allowing you to surmise between the lines, to think about your own thought process, as it were, to think about thinking. This is something that he is a master of. The second author I will commend to you is Anne Tyler. Now, if John le Carré is my literary father, Anne Tyler is my mother. And one of the things that's been said about her is that she writes from the angel's eye view. She loves all of her characters, including those that do nasty things. But they're not violent things. But it really is all about relationships, and it's all about very close relationships and intrigues within a family and within the family unit, jealousies, caregiving. She's typically writing in a contained space. That is the Roland Park neighborhood of Baltimore. And it's part of the charm of her book that you feel as though you're a member of that community if you never even ventured there. My favorite book of hers that I want to use as an example is Saint Maybe. An observation that I will share that book reviewers sometimes use for this type of story is cozy fiction. And just as I am uncomfortable with people referring to novels as entertainment, I'm also uncomfortable with people in the trade referring to novels as cozy, meaning, well, I don't know what. I don't know that authors ever coined this term. I think publishers coined it to telegraph to people that these books didn't contain profanity, they didn't contain violence. There were no explosions, no blood. That might be true of an Ann Tyler book, but I will say that these are not necessarily feel-good stories. And yet I think that there is a degree of warmth in terms of the way that she regards her characters, as the way that she describes their idiosyncrasies and their, even if you call it their lovableness, that everybody, they're all idiosyncratic in their own ways. They've all got their own attitudes, their own jealousies, their own prejudices, their own peeves. But she's really at the level of, again, and it has to do with detail, describing how someone sets a dinner table, or the ingredients that they put in their cooking, or the their their favorite this or that. This is all part of the detail that she shares with you because she's really in that moment with these characters. Now, Saint Maybe is the story of a young man over a period of years who ultimately takes on the caregiving of some orphaned children. The engine of drama in the story is that the main character feels as though feels a strong sense of guilt. He feels as though something that he said with a good intention, but that was a painful truth to his brother, caused his brother to kill himself. But at the time that his brother killed himself, he had a family. And so, main character here is going to reluctantly take on the responsibility of caring for these children. Initially, he thinks it's going to be short term until they can get placed in a home, because also the mother has tragically passed away, and that's another aspect of the story. But the thing that's really crucial here, I think, to think about is that in a mystery or in a mystery thriller, the circumstances of these deaths would be the core of the story. In this story, the deaths are just simply things that happen. It's it's how the characters who remain deal with those passings. So it's not so much a matter of the mystery surrounding a death or a crime. It's that the people who surrounded that event were able to make use of it, were able to turn it into, it's like the old war story where, you know, the soldier's gone and we want him not to have died in vain. So what do we do? What do we do to make meaning out of this? We use the things that happen. We must live and cope with and hopefully not only survive, but somehow transform or even triumph in unfortunate events, in any event, in anything that happens. How do we make use of things that seem even trivial? And in Ann Tyler, you will find, as you find detail in Le Carré that seems insignificant, in Ann Tyler, in her plots, there will be inconsequential events that reverberate for years. You may not know who your friends are. That's another conclusion, lesson that you can take from an Ann Tyler book, is that people who are very close may to you physically, they may be your next door neighbor, they may be someone that, goes to your church or your school or your synagogue or your temple. And they may seem like only an acquaintance, and yet you don't really necessarily know what impact your life and your actions have on them. You may never know. Again, there will be a character in an Ann Tyler novel who will show up or who will reveal their fondness or their care or even their love. I mean, there are characters in Ann Tyler novels who propose marriage out of the blue. And, this is a plot twist. This is the delight. And, you've got to be immersed in the detail of it's not a car chase. It's not a murder trial. It's the daily life of preparing this dish for this dinner. Who's going to show up? Who won't show up? Who's going to be polite? Who's going to be impolite? Well, then where are the jealousies? Where are the intrigues? Where are the resentments in the family surrounding all these personal interactions? And then the surprise of some character doing something you don't expect. And often it's generous and Tyler. The third author I will share with you is Peter De Vries, and you might not ever have heard of him. He was famous in literary circles of his time, which was, well, he was a poetry editor at the New Yorker magazine in the 1950s and 60s. And during that time, his novels began to appear, and they were all satirical, humorous relationship comedies. And I think the thing that's most significant about De Vries is his attitude, is that comedy is an attitude. Comedy is a way that you deliberately look at life. And the novel that I find influential, there were lessons learned there. There was a lot to enjoy. Is called The Mackerel Plaza. And it satirizes middle class suburban life. Mostly his books were set in suburban New York City. In the Mackerel Plaza, the main character is Reverend Mackerel. And he is the pastor of a Protestant church in the suburbs. And his wife has recently passed away. Mrs. Mackerel was a beloved member of the church, even saintly, much admired. And yet, after her passing, he developed a fondness and then entered an affair with the church secretary. The engine of comedy here is that the church admired Mrs. Mackerel so much that they want to build a shopping mall and name it after her, the Mackerel Plaza. Well, this is something of an embarrassment because if the Reverend's affair with the secretary becomes public, then he fears that it will dishonor his wife's memory and the enshrinement of her in this shopping mall. I do think that Mackerel Plaza illustrates the humor from hypocrisy, if you will. So I commend you to Peter De Vries, another author who shaped my life by helping me find an attitude if I'm going to write comedy or if I'm going to think of things in less than serious terms, how to clothe yourself in the attitude of not taking things very seriously. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts with Passion, Purpose, and Peace. And thank you to Dr. Teresa Mosley for the kind invitation. I encourage you all to keep thinking about thinking.